DLCs, or downloadable content, can come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. You can have simple expansions, new gameplay additions, cosmetics, microtransactions. We even have full games as DLCs now. But recently, I've seen a little trend happening, especially when it comes to my favorite games, where the DLCs have been quite negatively received, shall we say. Whether that be from lackluster content, review bombings from fans, or just ruining the base game. Firstly though, this video is not going to be a take on the downfall of modern gaming and saying video games are on a negative spiral. No, that's not what this video is about, because that's just a stupid opinion. But what I am going to talk about are some recent examples of DLCs that have not done quite as good as expected for whatever reason. So let's start with the most recent example, Rainworld's new DLC, The Watcher. This expansion was something I've been looking forward to heavily since it was teased in March of 2024, and it had some mixed feelings towards it once it released. Positive reviews were glazing the fact that it felt a lot like the base game with its mystery and feeling of being lost in a strange new world. There was also a lot of positivity about the new regions, enemies, and soundtrack. But other than that, that's where the positives stop. And there was a lot to dislike. The paths you can take to beat the game are very confusing, and everything just felt disconnected. The balancing of this game was also just not very good. Sometimes there would be 20 creatures in every single room, or sometimes you wouldn't even find anything for a whole cycle. In my time playing, especially in the earlier sections, it felt like they added a lot of the more difficult enemies just to make it different. And the story was very whack, to say the least. It didn't really feel like it fit too much into the base game, and with the reduce, reuse, recycle of modded regions added into it, it felt more like a Rainworld fanfiction than anything, and everything was left really open-ended, which is a very main theme and aspect of Rainworld. But this DLC left us with more questions than answers, and overall, it was very lackluster. To put it into perspective, the first DLC, Downpour, added 5 whole new slugcats, all complete with their own stories, and added new regions, enemies, and soundtracks. And the base game had 3 campaigns, so yeah, this was an improvement. But for The Watcher, there's only one. It feels like we got a fifth of the content we were hoping for, especially at the exact same price, but I'll confess, most of what I've gathered has been from a lot of other people's opinions and reviews, and while I did play over an hour of it, I ended up refunding it so I could use that $20 for better things. Do you know how wild that is, especially for me, to refund one of my most anticipated releases of 2025 on day 1? But saying all that, I see the potential. After its release, we have had many updates fixing many bugs and other changes, which is really nice to see. And a while ago, they've already explained that after its release, they'll have a bunch of updates after, and the final endings aren't even out yet. They're coming with the console releases, so this isn't the final product. For a day or two after its release, it was sitting at a mixed review, and I'm quite happy to see it up to mostly positive now. It's clear that as a community, we had very unrealistic standards for the quality and amount of content that we were expecting. And we'll just have to see what comes of it with the full amount of content. The Watcher is not a bad DLC. But what is bad is Risk of Rain 2 Seekers of the Storm. Oh boy. Released towards the end of 2024, this is one I was incredibly hyped for. I even stayed up all night to buy it right off release, and it exists. After Gearbox acquired full rights to the Risk of Rain IP, obviously everyone heard the alarm bells ringing. But we stayed put because this was their first attempt to show what they had up their sleeves for it. And their sleeves must be smelly as fuck since this was some straight dog shit. It added 3 new survivors, new items, stages, enemies, and a whole new endgame boss, and it certainly had those. It seemed like it was going to have more content than the first DLC included, but the execution was absolutely horrendous. The new survivors felt clunky and the animations were stiff. The new items were very unbalanced. A few of them, and especially the reds, were overpowered as shit, and the rest were just below average. They did what the base items already did, just in different ways. They were just mid. The maps also felt very out of place when you compared it to every other map in the game. They had way too many open areas with very confusing layouts, and a lot of unneeded rooms and areas that just went nowhere. The new enemies were at least decent. There weren't many, but they were alright, and the boss was bad. Its attacks were not even close to being as interesting as Mithrix was, and fighting it, there was no strategy. Just deal damage until it came close and dodge away. But even that couldn't help you a lot since the attacks were overpowered as shit. This laser could literally kill you in 0.5 seconds with barely any place to hide from it effectively. It was not good at all, but these aren't even the worst parts. The bugs was the worst of it. Listing out every bug, glitch, and game-ruining feature would be an impossible mission, but easily the worst one was that everything in your game was connected to your FPS. Gravity, momentum, enemy spawns, and more was controlled by your frame rate. Just round of applause for Gearbox, holy shit. Now it's speculated that the reason behind this is that Gearbox used to work on the console port for the game, which was notorious for being pretty bad in itself, but they were so used to working on the console version, they ported it over to PC to develop Seekers of the Storm on it, which is a very bad idea and is probably why the game was almost unplayable for a while after its release. People were literally reverting to the older versions of the game because it wasn't just the DLC that broke the game, the base game was screwed too. But the biggest crime that came from this is mods just did not work with it, which I was very upset with. You don't mess with a man's mods. This DLC made me quit one of my most played and favorite games ever, and thankfully they have done a lot of work trying to fix it ever since. The survivors' items and boss were reworked, and I ain't gonna lie, I have been having fun getting back into the game after getting footage for this video, but it still feels off. Seekers of the Storm is now left as a pretty bad stain for the Risk of Rain franchise, and I just don't want to talk about it anymore, man. DayZ is a game that I've spent a lot of time with in the past year, picking up the game just as their first DLC became free for all players, coincidentally enough. But when they released their second DLC, Frostline, it had a lot of mixed feelings towards it. I bought it day one and I really enjoyed it, and still do. The spawn towns really give me Resident Evil Village vibes, but there were definitely problems. With its release, it also came with a huge update to the base game, and with quite a bit of overhauls. Due to the winter and snowy nature of the new map, this was of course where a lot of the features were aimed towards. There were new additions to winter survival, the heat systems were overhauled with changes to how the heat buffs works, clothing storage was nerfed, predator meat now made you sick, and a large number of other changes. This was one of the bigger updates that we've had for the game for quite a while, which was also part of the problem. Firstly, the price of the DLC was very controversial. Being almost half as much as the base game costs is quite pricey considering the nature of the game. Most players usually stick to community servers due to the wide range of features and freedom, and with this also comes tons of player-made maps for completely free. And because we were spoiled with all these free modded maps for so long, having this rather featureless and expensive knockoff of Namalsk felt like a slap on the face to the community. And because it was also locked behind a paywall, player counts were high on release, but very quickly dropped. And today, almost nobody is playing any Sakal servers, which is quite sad to see. And going back to the update, although the reasons mentioned before were definitely a big part of the negative reviews, they also came with the fact that DayZ updates are few and far between, and when there is an update, it doesn't do much. Maybe a nerf, or a buff to some system, or a new gun if we're lucky. But Frostline and its 1.26 update was mostly made for the DLC, so half of the update was locked behind a paywall, which definitely resulted in a lot of review bombing. But today, although the developers are still working on it and changing some features, it's still for the most part unplayed. And oh well. We're DayZ players, we've basically gone over it already and are sticking back to our classic Chernarus maps and ruling at the 2025 roadmap. I love DayZ. These were just a couple of recent DLCs from my favorite games that really weren't what we expected and didn't live up to the high expectations that we had for them leading up to their releases. And these aren't at all for the fault of the developers, and aren't bad per se, except Seekers of the Storm. But for the watcher, it's still yet to be seen what comes of it, knowing that we still don't have the full amount of content. And for DayZ, Frostline / Saferoom, it was really just an unfortunate predicament for the game. Again, I want to state that I definitely don't think that the gaming landscape as a whole is on a downward spiral, and there really is no downfall for DLCs, so enjoy the half clickbait. But it just goes to show that sometimes things don't work out, and it sucks that that happened for 3 of my favorite games of all time. So, like, subscribe, and become a channel member to make me feel better. Please.